My decision to participate in alternative media has left me no shortage of interesting people to talk to and several different media in which to talk to them on. And I often get myself into very interesting conversations about a lot of the mainstream political and societal things that are going on in this country. I've had great opportunities to experience a lot of different opinions and varieties of opinions from varying levels of right, left, center, libertarian, authoritarian, and otherwise. There are a lot of different people out there, and many of them are more like minded than you think. In a Discord server this morning, I got into a discussion about Robert Mueller and the Russia collusion case, and after a long rant that I went on that seemed to maybe push a few people away from the conversation, I realized that there was more that bothered me about this topic than I thought, and none of it had anything to do with the investigation itself or what the people were finding. The Mueller probe has been going on for just about a year at this point. It was on May 23rd of 2017 that Congress decided that Robert Mueller is ethically able to conduct the investigation without any sort of prejudice. And in that time, the entire probe has been under scrutiny a lot from both sides. One side for not finding anything, and the other side for, well, not finding anything. As I've been going along my alternative media journey, I've been starting to follow more and more left-leaning people on social media. Therefore, I can get some ideas on the other side of the opinion and what people who don't necessarily agree with me think about the Mueller probe and other social issues. In the case of the Mueller probe, we've gone from Russia hacked the election, hacked the voting machines, and made sure that everybody voted for Trump even if they didn't vote for Trump, and that's what made him carry away the election, to now looking into money laundering and a certain, at one point, no-name porn star who had a consensual relationship with our current sitting president that now wants to come back and act like she was raped even though she comes out and says that it was consensual. And even then, the situation has nothing to do with the fact that our current sitting president had a consensual relationship with a porn star 12 years ago. The problem that they have with it is campaign finance, because one of Trump's lawyers went and paid the woman off in order to keep her silence. And by the way, for everybody who's keeping score at home, yes, this is a part of the Mueller probe. Now, one of the reasons that I actually get upset about this topic is a question that nobody seems to be asking and nobody seems to care about. When I started looking into the origins of the special counsel, one of the first things I found is that it was kicked off by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, which means it is a government investigation which is began and funded by the government. The first thing that I'm going to say is that I admittedly did not look very hard to go and try and find numbers. My assumption right now is the fact that much of it is classified given the fact that it's still an ongoing investigation, and in addition the fact that it's an investigation that hasn't concluded yet. So it's going to be very hard to get any sort of accurate numbers. But there were some numbers that I did find while I was out doing research. One of the most important numbers to me is the fact that Robert Mueller in private practice was a partner in a law firm and was making just about $3.5 million a year, according to Politico. And what that tells me is that I don't think he's making that now under government work, but I can't imagine that his legal fee is very cheap in any way, shape, or form. He walked away from a lot of money to go and conduct this investigation. And one of the things that I found about people who make $3.5 million a year is that they spend money like they have $3.5 million a year to spend. Now, I'm sure that Mueller had quite the bolstered savings account that he can draw from, and quite a number of assets and stocks that he can liquidate if he should run into any sort of financial troubles while he's conducting this investigation. But you know as well as I do, and especially with government, you have to get paid for your time, and oftentimes the fees are larger than if you were to go into private practice or the private market and to do things. Therefore, I'm sure that Mueller's salary by itself is quite the hefty bill. Now, in addition to Mueller, there are going to be investigators when you're doing something like this. Bob Mueller is not sitting out on the streets with a houndstooth cap and a magnifying glass looking for everything. He's got people to do that for them, and all of those people need to draw a salary as well. In addition, all of those people need equipment, they need vehicles, they need fuel for those vehicles, they need to eat, they need places to stay while they're staking things out. You can't just stay in your car every single night. You have to go and sleep in a bed every once in a while. And of course, none of this is counting tips, incidentals, and the occasional bribe to get a little bit of information. We don't talk about those very often, but I'm sure anybody who's read any sort of crime novel, true crime story, or any sort of espionage reports knows that it happens from time to time. And in addition to that, you have court costs, lawyers, and other staffers for the court. All of that comes on the government's dime. The bottom line is that this investigation is costing our taxpayers an awful lot of money and not getting very good results in return. Now, I don't want to comment specifically on the crime of collusion because I'm not a lawyer, and in spite of the fact that I've done some reading about it, I actually don't know. From everything I've read, though, it looks like collusion itself is not a crime in any way, shape, or form. But what I do know about the investigation is this. In just a little bit under a year, there have been 5 convictions on 13 indictments. Several cases have been dismissed without prejudice, and several not guilty pleas are in, and there's still trial going on. But everything that's been indicted has been a process crime. It's been things like lying to the FBI or a bank fraud here and there. And it's a process to an investigation into a crime that everything that I've read says doesn't exist. Mueller himself even came out in the past week and said that he cannot draw any sort of indictment on a sitting president at the time. Therefore, by all rights, this investigation should be dead. There's no crime and there's no way to indict the target. But yet the investigation continues at this point and seems like it's going to continue into the foreseeable future, possibly throughout 2024, depending on what they can and cannot find. Of all the White House leaks that are going on right now, I'm surprised that one of the leaks hasn't been the running tally of the amount of money that's been spent into this investigation. I'm sure if that information ever came out, this investigation would be over the following day. It would be really interesting to see that information get leaked here in primary season while the general American populace is voting whether or not to let the incumbents sit and run again in November for their currently held seats. And of course, I would love to find out who's writing the checks to keep this investigation going. That's a level of government transparency that I've been hoping for ever since I started becoming politically involved. I also feel like as this investigation drags on, if a petition were to be circulated around the country to demand that Congress pull the funding away from the Mueller investigation and go find the funding elsewhere, we may have enough signatures to do so in a very short order. When I was first talking about it in the Discord server, I said 6 hours. I think it might take a little bit longer than that, but it would be a pretty short order to get that many signatures. And I'm not saying that would kill the investigation. I'm sure a congressional member putting a GoFundMe out to continue the investigation would be fully funded within a few days. There are a lot of people that are on the left that really want to see this investigation go to its conclusion, whether there's a conclusion or not. Most of all, at this point, a year later, I'd just like to see this investigation end. Let Mueller put his cards on the table. Let's see what he has. Let's see what he's actually found. And let the American people decide, especially with midterms coming up, whether or not they trust the president and the incumbent party, or whether they'd like to see a change in government again. History is with the party that's out of power right now. Historically, the president loses seats in a midterm election. But if they're going to continue to hammer the narrative and push the investigation to an end that I don't believe is there, I believe it's actually going to lose them power and sway in the upcoming election. Vietnam was ended because it lost popularity. There were a lot of cheerleaders for the conflict when it began. People were tired of seeing a long, drawn-out conflict in which people were being damaged on both sides and nothing was really getting done. I think every day that goes on that this investigation continues, another person who was originally a supporter of the investigation is going to fall away, knowing that nothing is going to come out of it in the end, and there's nothing that they can use as an impeachable offense and political pressure to remove a sitting president from office. And mostly, I'd like to know where the money is coming from that continues to fund this investigation. All I hear about on the news is social problems that need to be taken care of and we need to funnel money into. And I feel like all of this money in this investigation could be better allotted to another cause. And finally, I'd like to point out that if this investigation is going to end, it either needs to end by Mueller saying that there's nothing more that he can do, or political pressure from Congress to end it because it's costing them too much. I understand fully that for President Trump to come out and do anything would be political suicide and would almost certainly lead to an impeachment attempt in 2018, no matter who keeps control of the House. What are your thoughts on the special counsel investigation, Robert Mueller, his findings, or the indictments that have come out of the investigation? I always welcome thoughtful and productive discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlogTwitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks for taking the time to watch this show and support this channel. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care, everyone.